The world's going woke, and as a Christian parent, I found the best books for our kids. Now, it's called Picture Book Apologetics with James and Ruth. Now, James and Ruth are two characters in these books, and they are amazing. So we're going to quickly break these down for you so that you, as a parent, know how to teach your kids how to think logically and critically about certain things in the world, and not just accept everything as it is. So let's start off with Chameleon's Can of Worms. Now, the story behind this book is my daughter came to me and she said, we're watching a show on Netflix. It was a baking show and they're making cakes, and one of the contestants, I suppose, shocking green hair, a lot of piercing, like it was just very expressive in how he dressed, which is fine. And Amelia asked me, Dad, is that a boy or a girl? So I said, well, what do you think? I always want to ask her because I want to understand how she thinks about things. And she said, well, I think he's a boy, but if he wants to, he can be a girl. And I paused the TV and I remember what we read in this one, Chameleon's Can of Worms, and was all about subjective truth. You know, what is truth? And I used this book to illustrate to my daughter that just because something feels a certain way does not objectively make it true that it is that way. Now, the illustration used in Chameleon's Can of Worms is that of a goldfish and a shark. So there's the illustration that I read to Amelia, and this is how it goes. James, let's pretend there is a great big shark swimming by. What if I think it's a goldfish? Does that make it a goldfish? James stifled a giggle. Mom, you're being silly. It's a shark. You're right, James, Mom said. Even if I don't believe it's a shark, it's still true that it is a shark. That is why our family believes there is something called absolute truth. Do you know what absolute truth means? And then she goes on to explain what this is. And this is all for the chameleon, it's for the chameleon to hear, because the chameleon keeps challenging them on certain things. Well, why is this right? Why is this wrong? Is it just wrong because you said so? Or what it is. So the whole concept behind this book is relative and absolute truth. And it was good. I used that illustration for Amelia to demonstrate, well, just because certain things appear to be a different way, or people think they are something else, there's an absolute truth there that we have to discover. What is that? And we concluded, well, how do we absolutely know whether someone's male or female? And I was like, well, we said it was grounded in, I suppose, genitalia, but it's more than that, right? It's more on a chromosomal level, because you obviously have intersex people. But and I was like, some of the world explains that gender and sex are mutually exclusive. One's a social construct and the other one is grounded in biology. Now, the thing about that, though, is that the social construct is a subjective truth, right? It's a relative truth. It's not an absolute truth statement, because who in society has the authority to absolutely say how many genders there are, right? Because as soon as you say, well, gender is a social construct, social means society is the ones that deem it what it is. What part of society? I'm part of society, and I say there's only two genders. Does that make it true? You see, because if you ground it in something that is subjective, you cannot absolutely say that this is true. You cannot absolutely say that it's true that there are 56 genders, right? And that's why we ground it in something called absolute truth. And something that is absolutely true beyond us, right? And that is biology. Anyway, the second one we went through was the empty tomb and the possums. So, what this is about is James and Ruth are playing. They see this hole in the rock, and they say, oh, this looks like what the tomb of Jesus must have looked like. And these possums come out, and they say, well, what are you talking about? How do you know Jesus was really buried? And they start challenging them. Well, how do you know they didn't just steal the body? And then they're like, no, it's guarded by a a cohort of Roman soldiers. Like, what does that actually mean? And they explain what that means, like going up against a tank, the disciples, right? Then they're like, well, what if they just misplaced him in a different tomb? And they're like, no, let's talk about Joseph's tomb. And then, so they go through all these challenges that Christians face on the crucifixion of Jesus, right? And where he was buried. How do you know he was resurrected? Then they go through the evidence for the resurrection, and it's such a good storybook for kids to equip them early on what it actually means to, like, what the Christian story of the crucifixion, the burial, and the resurrection means, so that from a young age they actually learn how to defend it. Great book. Another one, Push and the Pearly Gates, talks about what does our forever home look like. The stages of going to heaven, and what's the new earth like, and what does that mean? So the Pooch comes and challenges them and says, no, but I heard heaven's boring. It's just a whole bunch of people in the clouds with wings playing the harp and just singing the same old hymns and following the same old rules. And then they actually break down what the new earth and heaven looks like, what does scripture tell us it is. Then he challenges them on certain things, right? Well, how do you go to heaven? How do you know if you're going to heaven? Who's saved? And they explain very well what it means. What do you, like, is it just good deeds that get you to heaven? What does it mean to be saved? And they break it down for the Pooch. Now the books carry on, right? There's a whole bunch. Crows and the Missing Piece. This deals with a story about the reliable transmission of the Bible. Right, another one, Fox and the Hard Day, responding to the problem of evil. Like, how do we make sense of evil in the world if God is all good? Right, great story. Toad and the Tough Truth, a story about hell. How do we teach hell to our kids? Now, I don't want to share everything about all the books, because I want you to go and buy them, support the authors, support these books. Picture Book Apologetics. It is one of the best tools that I have gotten for my kid. It's what we read at night before bedtime. And the nice thing is, at the end of the books, there's actually questionnaires for parents. Like, hey, here's how you can engage in conversations with your kids. Ask them these types of questions. As a family, do these activities together. I know Pooch and the Pearly Gates, there's a whole diagram of what it means. And this is free on their website, that's why I'm sharing this. What happens when we die? A whole breakdown of the stages leading up to the eternal state and on the new earth and stuff. It's really good. And there's a whole bunch of conversation starters with your kids. So if you're afraid in this woke world that we're living in right now, even our private school here at the Christian church is getting filled up with kids from other religions, atheist kids, not atheist kids, like, parents that are atheists, that don't believe in anything, would rather put the kids in Christian school because they want to get away from just the weird indoctrination that's happening right now with our kids. If you as a parent like me are trying to look out for the best for your kid, get these books. They help. Have a good one.